com. Uh, he's going to give us the primer on what's going on in the world. And if you guys would, he's willing to take questions. He's going to go through, so I think about 50, 60 slides.
No.
We'll open it up to questions.
Can you hear me? Is it on for here? Okay. So they gave me a little lapel mic. So that. Well, first I want to say thank you for having me. I love coming out to brokerages to talk. The good news is there's nothing to talk about. It's exactly the opposite. I was telling someone in the room earlier, we probably in the 20 executive work in the MLS side, there's probably been 2 or 3 moments that are this big, and they're really not this big, right? Clear Coop 2006, when most of you weren't even practicing real estate probably, but what was a mandatory ADX and valve feeds, right? Now you all appreciate having your own websites, but before that time, it wasn't allowed. So what I want to talk about today is, first thing, I appreciate all of you, and I want you to know you're a fantastic broker in Dean Crandall. Without good brokerages right now, this is a difficult state. Dean's phone is probably going to blow up over the next 6 months, but never has there been a better time where you need agents, because lots of errors can be made in the compliance with these rules. Okay, we'll see if this works. All right, so getting ready for the implementation of these changes, I'm going to summarize it for you in just this short. Dean can distribute these, but this is what is changing. So offers of compensation are prohibited party products. Okay, so what does that look like in practice? Well, the BAC, the BBC variable, any field related to commissions is going to be removed from the MLS on August 14th. Okay. Commissions paid cannot be disclosed on sold listings. Okay. And we're going to get into that a little bit more. Paid X amount and record that on the MLS. No filtering or restricting list compensation or agent brokerage name. So the NAR settlements, does anybody know how much money was paid by NAR to settle? For $418 million, okay? The brokerages that were also sued contributed another. The case right now sits at about $1 billion in settlement money, which is ridiculous, right? How much do you think the attorney, about 33 to 40%, they're walking home with $500 million. For the Inman conference, I was speaking at it, and I was sitting right here with Andy Florence, who's the CEO of Homes.com and Apartments.com, biggest company in real estate right now. And he told me that he had on good knowledge that they were shopping, the plaintiff's attorneys were shopping for, because he probably has a private jet and knows the people who sell the jets. So this is a big deal, right? This settlement is a big deal. Filtering and restricting listings, we haven't allowed you to sort by commission in about 3 years. Sort, you can't sort. You can't search by it. And that's because these rules actually, some of them went into effect a couple. What this means for you in practice is that if you know a brokerage doesn't pay anything, like let's say you just have his commission and they won't pay a commission, you are not supposed to take their listings out of listings that may be some things you want to show, and that brokerage doesn't pay anything. You're not supposed to filter that listing out. You're supposed to give that about it, but you don't necessarily have to show it. You don't have to go spend money doing work that you're not going to be compensated for. Exclude it from basic information with your client. Does that make sense? So just be very careful with that. That includes agent. So just be mindful of that. Members are prohibited from participating in multi-brokerage commission sharing. I'll answer whatever you have, but there's already websites popping up where agents can go on and enter this to the buyer's agent and multiple brokerages want to participate in that, that is not allowed. Faster with the Department of Justice than participating in one of these platforms. Now, what can you do? You can, on a personal website, you can advertise if you're going to pay commission out on your listings. You cannot show what some, okay? So that's the big clarification. So there can't be a aggregated place where brokerages are advertising commissions at any. Say, well, are we really under the radar of the DOJ? You're not. They know about all this. I mean, they are in everybody's business, from your franchisor brokers to your MLSs to your associations. They are hyper. August 17th. They want to make sure that there's a level playing field. Okay, and the last thing is written agreements with terms are the dicey one, because they don't tell you exactly what those terms have to be. So people all over the country are saying, what do I have to use? Us, you need to have something in writing. If you want to get paid, make sure you have your payment terms in there and get it signed prior to showing. What we will have in the MLS, aligned showings will have a certification field. So if you go to schedule a showing, at the end, it'll that I have a written agreement in place with my buyer prior to showing this property, at least as a listing agent, then that gives feelings about whether or not that person has that agreement signed. And so we will require that starting on the 17th. MLS, we kind of already talked about what's coming out. So in the orange box here, these are being removed. Historical listings. So the compensation fields that were there will be removed historically as well. So you won't be able to go back to a listing. So 15, it won't be there. Okay. Any questions on this? On reports? Yep.
Not doing it historical.
They don't want anything that can show a pattern offered a certain percentage historically. They don't want a new agent or a new buyer broker to see that and expect that that's going to be. That's pretty much the main reason. They just don't want any information on commissions in the MLS. And you know what this stems? The lawsuits were all about one main thing. They said that brokerages and the NAR with their, whether it's a penny, anything had to be just greater than zero. They said that they conspired the allegations which hurt home sellers and home buyers and inflated prices of homes. Okay, that's what the cases were. Okay, here's something we recommend. So this is the nugget I want to give you today. Prior to August 14th, if you have a listing that's under contract in backup, whatever it is, we recommend that you PDF print, whatever you like to use, the commission, because that is still locked in and a guaranteed contract for thing going under contract. So, but it'll disappear, right? We will have a historical record of it at the MLS, but give out. So we recommend that you have something under contract or pending. Make sure on the 13th you save it, but do that on the 13th, because on the 14th you'll go in there and that won't be there. And if something happens in the deal, it could get a little dicey. On that, as a broker, you can go in and we'll have directions on the MLS, I think today or tomorrow, where you can go in all pending and under contract listings. You can pull all that down. All right, concession after the settlement. The settlement said you can still offer concessions. And real quick trivia, I'll give a month of free MLS. Who are concessions given to? From who? Okay, everybody got the answer? You should raise your hand. All right. I'll have another question at the end. We'll give away something. But yes, it can be advertised in agent remarks and public remarks. Okay, so if you want to say, hey, let's say the house had been shown falling apart, the roof's falling apart. So the listing agent says to the buyer or to the seller, hey, we should give a concession for back to the eventual buyer of the property to be used for the roof. You can put that in public remarks. You can put that in agent remarks. You cannot put in 2% of the sale price will be given back to the buyer to pay their agent. Okay, does that make sense? You can put $25,000 if that's the specify it is for commissions. Okay, so it's not to be used as a workaround solution to the commission. Yes. You can offers, they're not guaranteed, right? So they're negotiating chips, right? They're things that you might extend out or retract back property. So you've got to be careful if you are doing a pattern and you are just trying to field and move it into the agent remarks, it's not going to be allowed. Okay, and just telling you right now, across the country, the DOJ has made it very clear to us that that cannot happen inside the MLS. So you can offer concessions, right? But if you cloud a concession as a commission, that is not the proper thing under the settlement. Okay, so like if you just write in there 3% concessions every single time, you're using it as a compensation field. What's not new? So let me go. Well, that's new. So on the final page, and this is going to look a lot different on the 14th because we redesigned the page. It looks beautiful, but report your paid concessions. Okay, so at the end, it's important. You can do that right now, but you can report them and they're used for a new roof or a bathroom remodel or to pay closing costs or whatever it is. You can describe it here. All right. Question. It is optional that you report it. However, it does help with appraisals and things like that in the future. So we encourage it. Yep. Totally fine. I wouldn't describe it as what it's being used for. Does that make sense? So if there's concessions paid, this is the amount. I back and looked at our concessions field and hardly anybody uses the remarks box. Almost everyone just puts in a dollar figure. That's how I anticipate it will be used going forward as well. All right. We released all of the UAR forms. So they're all inside the MLS, both in SkySlope and in the MLS forms library. They're for you. Prior to August 14th, don't forget to download or print out or however you want to do things. And August 14th, the new rules go into effect and all the comp fields will come out of the MLS. Okay. And really the 17th is a Saturday and we wanted to make sure technologically we have a couple days in case something goes haywire. I sit a couple days early. Okay. Questions on this? I mean, I know there's a million of them, but what I will say, you have a great broker. Ask your broker questions. I don't believe this is going to be that impactful in the grand scheme of things. You have tremendous value and worth as realtors. You need to remember that your services over and over again. The race to the bottom is quick and terrible. Don't race to the bottom, right? If you're a millennial, they're willing to pay $11.95 for a cup of coffee to have it delivered to their house. Cup of coffee, right? I mean, we know this, right? That's a lot more than 6%. Okay, I'm going to buy delivered to my house for 10% of the price of the car, rather than go down and pick up the car at the Service is expected. We are in a service industry. People pay for Uber, they pay for Lyft, they pay for Uber, for hotel, for $80 for Subway, because it's easy. You're providing professional service than Uber Eats. Okay, so do not devalue yourself. The lifelong option, in my opinion, actually kind of hurt the industry, and this is actually a good thing, because maybe you provide 10% of services, maybe you provide handyman services, maybe you do other things for your client, maybe you're a full concierge. People are willing to pay, right? And you have to remember that there's no locked in number, right? There's no locked in percentage. This is your time to really show your worth. Don't rely on set figures. Okay, I think this is where people are willing. My side's going to be willing to pay. People are willing to pay. Make sure you can have that discussion, just transparent. I mean, when you book Uber Eats, it tells you how much it costs. Does anybody go, I'm not going to use it today? Rarely. The food I want isn't being delivered by Uber Eats, so I'm going to go over to the competing company, right? And so that's what I'll just say. Everything has really changed. You always had a buyer broker agreement in the state of Utah. We're one of the few states that had it in place. So this is nothing. The discussion is what is harder, right? Having those talks with your clients, but they're going to get used to it because it's happening all around the country. Everywhere. When people go to buy and sell a home, these are the discussions that are going to happen going forward. So don't be afraid of it. Be on. Sell yourself short. I think that's the key. If I leave with anything, is do not sell yourself short. Charge for your services. Be proud of the client, and I actually think commissions could go up long term for the good agents. Okay.
On the Rep C around commissions.
Yes.
Can you kind of speak to where we're and kind of maybe details of what's actually going to be in the Rep C, what it's covering?
So you can go see it now. I mean, I think but the big issue was related to sharing a commission, and I will tell you right now, it is on in a commissions is allowed, so it can't just necessarily be removed. However, the Department of Justice has made it very clear. They've basically the country and served what's called a civil investigative demand on certain companies like the California. So we know you're going to launch this form. We know you're going to launch it with shared commission. We're just telling you we don't support that. And we're not going to tell you. However, we don't think it's a good idea. What that did, CAR pulled it out. Utah pulled it out under the threat that it could become a huge issue in the future. Okay. And so it won't be in there. It doesn't mean you can't share. Negotiate them outside the MLS. Don't forget that too, is that commissions can still be shared and they can be negotiated. And that's really what you need to know. You can do it via email, you can do it via phone, you can talk to the other agent. You just can't memorial. Great question.
So I just wanted to clarify, you said on concessions that if you put a percentage that could be used for concessions, but if you did it all the time, you can't do that?
I don't have a perfect answer for
Okay.
you. Yeah. Your concessions are really commissions, it's not allowed. If your concessions are truly like, we're giving it to you for whatever you I mean, and that's what it has to be. It's whatever you want, buyer. So if that buyer decides, you know what, I'm going to take it and I'm going to just pocket it. That's the buyer's choice.
But, okay, but they can't get cash back, can they? Like mine?
They can. Lender is in the room.
Yeah, there's certainly limits on what.
There's limits on the interested party
on what
contract.
is-
Yes, in the back.
My voice is pretty loud. You said that on your website, you could put the questions, but what about social media? That's your own personal.
If it's your listing,
Yeah.
there's no Yep. So we did release, right now, the profile card, which comes up inside of every listing. You can have your website as a link. We cannot link to the individual listing. But we can take you to your homepage.
Can we use a line confirmation approval? Like you can send a link to, here's my website. You can view the BBC and
You can use the communication centers to communicate with the other agent one-to-one. You just can't do it in map line showing profile that 3% is being paid on this commission or on this property. But if you're messaging another agent, communication.
So then when you confirm it and you send like, you're showing is offering 3% BAC, is that allowed since it is?
I would
just-
say no.
Okay.
I would say no.
But
Because
that's
then you're
the
using,
messaging.
but you're at that point, anybody who clicks on it is going to see it.
No, that's the confirmation.
No,
if
just
I
the
understand. The
confirmation is still
confirmation
message.
Automated confirmation, right?
Yeah,
But I guess it is automated confirmation that you could put in the notes that would.
Yeah. I would say be careful on that. If you send a follow-up message, it's a one-to-one. You can market the property however you want. It's really just that use of the automated system.
it seems that if somebody were to, let's say I get a message saying that listing, I can send Corey a quick text and say, hey, Corey,
100%.
just want to let you know, and here it is. Then that's
Yeah.
that one-on-one form
Yeah.
that, was directed from the MLS.
Because one of the rules is the MLS cannot support a platform that broadcasts support it. We can't give them data. We can't utilize them. And so you have to be careful. You just have to think one-to-one communication is communication, right? Because your question is really good, but what are you really trying to say? You're really trying to tell everybody that I'm right. Yeah. Yeah. I get it. Yes.
That room on the altar, like, how is that lined for that commission that you're offering?
The concession
Yeah, the concession
for like the escrow.
to the
title people.
brokerage.
I would imagine it would, so if it's a concession buyer, it's going to be shown as a concession to the buyer, right? I don't know if you can earmark it and commission. It would appear just like it appears today, which is completely allowed. Yep. So if you share the commission, the contract would look exactly the same. If it's a concession, if it's couched differently, I don't know the answer to that.
So Brad, let me title people can jump in as well. If we use the payment, want the seller to pay, I'm going to say 2.5%, and that's what I've asked for in my offer. Is that not a commission paid to my brokerage? It doesn't go to the buyer. That's not a concession. That's a payment. And correct?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm just asking.
If it's a shared commission, it appears just like it does now. If it's a concession, then it appears differently, right? Because it's given to the buyer. Does it have to be used for the roof? That's a question. $1,000 concession, does it have to be used on the roof if it's for the roof? Right now, what happens today? It's going to be exactly the same way, just a larger amount.
So if we're advertising like on Facebook Marketplace or
Yeah.
KSL or like.
Yeah, as long as it's your listing.
Okay.
It has to be your listing.
And then I may not, sorry. Questions.
Yeah.
I may understand the settlement wrong, but I was under the impression that the whole issue was weren't super transparent, but this just seems less transparent. Like
So
what we're paying.
yeah, so look, we had the
Oh, okay.
most transparent, we had the most transparent and open and this ever. The MLS is, if you were to go to a foreign country right now, they would give anything to do what we do with. There's lots of countries setting up MLSs under the system we had
Yeah.
with the commissions because it's so clear and transparent to the consumer. Transparent to your client once they're your client.
With your client.
Yes, instead of it being like everyone knowing you have to get to that client status to get the. So do I think it's more transparent? I do not. I actually think this hurts transactions. But there, I mean, every brokerage settled, Keller Williams settled, everybody settled, everyone agreed to these terms and rules.
Just really quick before I get to Sheila's question, we think of this, you just moved into the commercial, where you call up a commercial agent. Is there cooperation? Is there, something that I'm going to ask for or ask for whatever I want?
Yep.
So if the commission is part of a concession, it on a settlement statement, because that part of the concession is not included in the 3% seller contributions, which is a good thing because then they can contribute more. And that would have to go directly to the agents. Can only be used for buyers' closing costs or rate buy down. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Popular opinion, but I don't think that there's anything wrong with agents communicating with agents. We're all worried about where we're going to list this, but what's wrong with you, what you're listing at?
Nothing.
And for the question in the back about like KS stuff, if lots of brokerages start using those platforms, they'll get shut down. Like they'll probably just cancel all your accounts, right? Because they're hyper focused on multi together and basically publicizing their commissions. So what we know is okay is you can have your own website. Beyond that, if it's an aggregated site, and that's the key, if it's an aggregated site, multi-brokerage site, it's probably not going to be allowed. It's going to get shut.
Still attorney to represent our.
They had
I think part of the stress is we're worried about if somebody's going to know if something's being offered by our client. The fact all we have to do is call and ask for it. To her point, whether we had advertised it or not, we could throw that up completely out the window. So there's too much talk about that and too much worry about it. If we're doing our jobs, talk back and forth, it won't matter. If you want to buy something, you just call and ask.
And again, I think I like what you said. Right, and talking to your client's important, and letting them understand the fees right off at the outset will solve almost all these problems.
So as a listing agent, you have an agreement with your buyer, your seller.
Yep.
That they're willing to do whatever. So then you get those, like you tell them what it is. We'll just make up a number, like we'll just say
$1,000.
1%.
Yeah.
Okay. Is to say, let's say I got 5 offers. And so now can the seller just not do it? Like there's no binding, right?
So if
I guess the concern is not that I have to call the agent, but the concern is that then different scenarios come in and then they decide not to do it. And then my clients get blindsided maybe. I don't, does that
and
make
that
sense?
is the that we have right now with losing what's in the MLS, because the MLS was your surety. Like it was, here's what's broadcast out the only legal obligation. Your situation could happen, right? So seller takes a listing and says, I'm going to take, and we're not going to offer anything out to the buyers. We're going to see what comes into us. We're going to see what kind of offers comes in. So let's say the house is 100,000. 10,000 with a $10,000 request for paying the buyer's commissions. Well, now the seller can talk, or the buyer they'd offer, let's do it. Like, here's what we got to do. They change up their form, do an addendum to their listing agreement, the buyer's agent, and the deal gets done. It's more complicated, but it could happen.
So you do have to do an addendum. They just can't sign the to also do
That's a
an
good question.
addendum.
I think
But
they
it could
could.
be, it would seem if I'm saying,
They could.
like
yeah.
in your scenario, that there was no that there's
I
no
don't know.
the seller's
Well,
not willing to contribute.
No, they were willing to contribute a number, but then they got multiple to pay any of them. Like they could technically change their mind, right?
And there's nothing's in stone until you.
So the
saying
buyer's
is-
agent, you're going to have an agreement with your buyer that you're going to get paid.
Right.
If a seller decides at the last second, we're not going to pay anyone,
So we just
It
better
becomes-
put our
it becomes a-
commission in every offer because they could decide
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah,
every offer.
right.
So-
So there's a couple paths you can take, right? As a buyer agent in this case. And let's pretend we have a seller that offers 0. So now I know that let's take it back. Seller's gonna and you're okay with that 2.5, you go to the listing brokerage, they sign that brokerage agreement. That's the escrow instruction seller's brokerage. I have that agreement signed. That goes in with my offer because there was an offer of compensation. If, let's say, different scenario, seller says, I'm offering nothing, you write your offer with the payment addendum saying broadcast and offered, I'm asking the seller to pay 2.5. Now, if the seller signs
That's it.
because they're under contract.
Okay, I may be dumb, but where is it broadcast? Like in your text? Like,
Yeah, I just said Jay was willing to do 2.5. Great. Now I send over to you that buyer agreement. So I've just set it up, the brokerage, the escrow instructions, that comes in between the brokerages. I attach that with my offer because it's already signed by the agents and we're just getting principals, our buyer, the seller. Because it's already been agreed to between brokerages.
okay, so if they,
But there's
if they send you a text and say it's 2.5%.
Yep.
I have to send a broker compensation. If they say, and then if I wanted 3,
correct.
right? Okay, but if they have nothing, then I just send my other thing. Can I just send?
Send,
commission?
yeah, it's the payment addendum. Yep. Just like we're doing now. If you had in today's world, nothing, because it's possible,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
They say the listing brokerage is offering 0. We want you to pay over and above 0, 3, if that's your number, or 5, whatever your number is. The seller either agrees something that can be negotiated. Once it's agreed to, the sellers agreed to it. And now it's binding. And so
Yeah. And I think most of your contracts are going to have that addendum, right off the bat.
there are, as soon as I have someone that says they want it, they're actually taking it as part of their listing agreement, whatever the broadcast compensation they will offer that, they can send that agreement out with, to the buyer agent before the home's even shown if they want. My listing agreement, I'm going to have you fill out this form. If we agree to 3, we agree to 2, we agree to none. I'm to anybody that inquires about the listing. So they already have it signed by me, acknowledged by the seller. And then if you guys, so there's a couple of ways of
Complicated.
doing it.
It's complicated. I mean, there's no 2 ways around it. It's more, everybody's going to get into a groove, right? Because you're going to represent sellers, you're going to have buyers. And I think people are going to kind of understand, and it'll get easier. It's just going to be confusing the first 6 months to a year.
Yeah. And that's it, guys. It's just a change. You're still asking for compensation. I tease people and say, this is how you have to ask for your supper if you're representing a buyer.
I think part of the confusion, like to your point, in the past, this has been done in the background by the MLS that we're getting paid. That's no longer, it isn't in our contract somewhere that we're getting paid. You're not getting paid anymore. So the whole point of that, the I'm sorry, I'm not saying it right now. That's got to be in them from now on. So if you have a deal go across back and forth between your buyer and the seller getting paid, you're not going to get paid. Because it was always handled in the background by the MLS. And I think that's a big change that and around that it was done for us.
Yeah, so again, two ways to get paid. The payment addendum. And house, write offers, use the payment addendum, ask for what you want. Or talk to the listing agent, find out what's being or something, that you want, ask for the delta from the seller if they're not if they're not offering enough. The first option, if I talk to you, is no, they're offering 2 and I need 2.5. If that's where I am at with my buyer broker agreement. Payment or the brokerage to broker, it's the escrow instructions document. I'm sorry, what is the exact name of that?
I don't remember.
Anyway, it's that's signed by, and it can be in this brokerage, whenever it says it can be signed by the broker or the agent, authorized agent on behalf of what you want for commission that will come to this brokerage. So if you're okay with 2.5, take 2.5. And saying that, yep, I've just committed the listing brokerage to that 2.5. That's coming with the offer. If I need it, but you better have that. But if there's a delta and they say I need, and then they're offering 2 and I want the 2.5 on that. Does that make sense? You may, you know what? Pull out the dang form now on the MLS. You can't miss them. And so go through them, read them. It really it's actually easier than I make it.
All right. So let me ask you, because the broker to broker agreement that you're sending with your has nothing to do with the sellers at that point.
Of course it does, but the sellers already had the agreement.
Yeah, but with him, I'm just being playing, what if you submit both of those or accepts the offer, but the agents ignore your broker to broker agreement?
That's before you send it in. The listing brokerage is already committed to that. So that listing agent or broker, depending on what the say, I have to sign everyone. No, thank you. So that's a signed doc. You get that doc from the listing. Cheaper.
You see this eventually getting out of attendance and just being put in the ERS?
Maybe. I mean, I definitely do. I think, within the first 6 months to a year, there'll be more guidance. I think there's going to be lots of issues, right? Everything by 1.8 million realtors around the country, right? You're not alone.
Yeah.
There's confusion.
Before Jen's on the committee.
So the REPC has already been approved by the Real Estate Commission to include in the REPC. It's been sent to the Attorney General's office for approval, and we're waiting on that. So Attorney General's office, you'll have it right in the REPC. Yeah.
Okay, now I don't need my question.
Inspired. That is awesome. Now you guys have asked good questions. We are out of
Good.
time.
What's exciting?
Thank you. So
Having lots of change. I'll stay if you have questions afterwards.
All right. But again, thank you to our sponsors. Some lunch in the back. Go grab a slice, and guys, have fun with this.
Question.
Wait, sit down.
MLS dues.
A month of dues. It's worth dollars.
How many short sales? 11, 17. That's the right answer. 22 short sales. You won. Now, let me just tell you something. We have only averaged 4 active short sales. It has sprung up to 22 in the last 2 months. So it's still a very trivial 0.2% of our active listings. However, now than ever in the 9 years that I've been here. There are more actives on the market right now than in the 9 years I've been the CEO. The that is on its way. It's going up rapidly, which means as a buyer's agent, there's going to be a lot more to show, a lot more to pick from, probably very soon. Okay.
That's awesome. Great. Thanks, guys. I'll get that information. Okay. So take them off, say hey to them.